Now that we've looked at the distribution for a quantitative variable, let's look at how to make a histogram in Excel. So the data set we're going to use is titled What Percent of Your Home State's High School Students Graduate Within 4 Years? The data we have is for 2010 to 2011, which is the first year that all of the states used a common formula for their graduation rates. And the reason that's important is that it allows us to compare these groups evenly rather than people having different criteria for what graduation means. Now, 3 states, Idaho, Kentucky, and Oklahoma, received timeline extensions, so we don't have their data, but we have data for everybody else. All right, so before we hop over to Excel to look at making a histogram, there are 2 tips on this slide that I want to call your attention to. The first one says, always label your axes. And on a histogram, that horizontal axis, the one that you normally call the x-axis, is always your quantitative variable. So whatever that variable is that we're interested in, that is going to be the label that goes on that x-axis. Okay, and then the other tip is that we only highlight one column of data on a histogram. Every other graph we've made so far, you've highlighted 2 columns. This one, you're only going to highlight one column, and it's only the column with the quantitative variable that you care about. So if there's year or time data or other information, you just ignore those columns. All right, so we're going to hop on over to Excel and look at how to do that. All right, so we're in Chapter 1 data sets for Excel, and we're looking for the tab that says grad rate. And when you get there, you'll see that this tab has 3 columns of data on it. So it has the states listed alphabetically. It has the percent of students who graduated in 4 years. And then they've assigned each state to a region. So either to the South, the West, the Northeast, or the Midwest. Since we're making a histogram, we're only concerned with the quantitative data. So just this center column is all that we care about. We can ignore the other 2 columns. You will see this data set again in Chapter 2, and we will use some of those other columns. So we'll get a chance to look at that. But for today, we're just going to use the center column to make the histogram. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this quantitative data that's in the center column. And then to get to the graphs, remember we switch into the insert ribbon. And the graphs are kind of in the center of this ribbon. There are at least two ways that I know of to get to the histograms. There is a histogram button. It's the one with the 4 blue bars that's kind of catty corner to the pie chart and the bar chart. So that's one way you could get to that histogram. The other is you could go to the recommended charts. And then I usually click over to all charts because I see histogram on there. And then I can put that histogram on the page. All right, so there is the base histogram. Now there is a problem with the way that Excel makes their histograms. They generally correctly identify the lowest value, which is 59% in this case, but they don't usually get the top value right. So here they have the top value listed as 93%, and it's not that high. And so what happens is that distorts the graph and doesn't give you an accurate look at the distribution. So even if you were fine with the number of bars that Excel selected, you still have to go in and do the steps so you get the histogram to have the correct max and min. So if you are on a PC device using Windows and you have this gray color for your ribbons and background, most likely you're going to right click on the numbers below these bars. And you're looking for this choice that says Format Axis, and it pops up this panel on the side. If you're using the version of Excel that has a black background for the ribbon and sides, you can try clicking on those numbers. The other places I would try are clicking in this space between the bars. There's kind of that white line between the bars, or clicking in this background just behind the bars. So right-clicking there and looking for that Format Axis. And then if you're on a Mac, you can try right-clicking on any of those places. I think what you're looking for, though, is not Format Axis, but Format Data Series. So if you can find that Format Data Series, you'll choose Options. And from the options, you'll look for either the bin width or the number of bins. Okay, so hopefully one way or the other, one of those suggestions worked for you and the device that you're on. Now remember I said that this 93 is the max was not correct. I'm going to click on number of bins. I'm not going to change the number of bins. I'm still just going to leave it as 5 bins or 5 bars. But watch what happens, particularly on the right side once I click this. So you'll notice that bar now is the tallest one, whereas before it was very short. And now the max that they have listed here is 88. And that is the max of the data set. So they have correctly identified the min and the max, which is what you need to do to make a histogram correctly. So I'm not sure why it does that, but it is kind of a known issue, and you should always at least just click on the number of bins to get it to fix that, even if you do like the number that's there. All right, so while we're in this panel, we do have 2 more questions to look at. So it says change the histogram to have 6 bins or bars. So where this 5 is, I'll just replace it with a 6 and press enter. Okay, so now I can see what it looks like with 6 bars. And I can also change the bin width. So it says change the histogram to bins of width 5. So click on this bin width and I'll change this to 5. So this means it'll count by 5s. Now the problem with that is that if you don't select that number wisely, then you're going to end up with that same issue we were starting with, where the max isn't quite exactly right. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the number of bins. That's really the one that I think is the more accurate one. And I've still set on the 6 bins. Now, if you look at the bottom below the bars, you'll notice that they have these long strings of decimals. And that just makes it cluttered and difficult to read. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. On your homework or a test, I don't necessarily expect you to fix that, but I want you to see how to do it because you might need that for another class or it might just really bug you. So on my Format Axis menu, there's a choice for number. And essentially, it gives you some options to tell Excel a little bit more information about what you have in those cells. So right now it's set to general, which means, I don't know, Excel, use your best judgment. I'm going to switch this to be a number. So there's lots of choices on here. You could go with currency or dates or times, but we just have numbers. So I'm going to switch it to that. And it defaults to 2 decimal places, which is fine for me, or you can change it. But then that just really cleans up this area underneath the bars. Okay, so if that's something that bugs you, there's how you fix that. And then let's go ahead and add a title and axis labels here. So my title here is going to be something like high school grad rate, maybe within 4 years. And then to add the label below the bars and to the side, it's kind of the same place we've been going. We go to add a chart element, we go to the axis titles, and then we can add the horizontal one. So that's our quantitative variable that we're measuring, and that is the percent of students who graduated. That's the title for that. So I'm going to say percent students graduated high school, and then I'll put in parentheses in 4 years. Might be a little bit redundant, but better safe than sorry there. And then on the side, that vertical axis, that's going to be the number of states that have students that graduated at that rate. So we'll add that vertical label. We'll call that number of states. There we go. And so there's your graph. Okay, it's got a title, it's got my axes labeled, I have the correct number of bins that was specified, so I'm all good to go. Now, in terms of saving this as a PDF to submit this. So if you already know how to do that, you don't need to keep watching, but if you don't, or you just like a refresher, this would be, we'll do a quick tutorial on this. So I want to put this graph with the rest of the graphs from the classwork. So I'm going to Control-C or copy it. And then I'm going to go over to Word and paste it there. So give me a second to switch over to the other program. Okay, so I already started a file for these graphs, and it says Schaefer Graphs Chapter 1, and I pasted the time plot from earlier. And I'm going to Control-V and paste the histogram in there. So it looks all good to go. And once I have all my graphs in this file, I'm going to save this as a PDF. So I'll go over to File, and then I'll go down to Print. And if you are on a PC device, typically there's a choice that says Microsoft Print to PDF. If you're on a Mac, often there's a little button down here at the bottom of the panel that opens that says Save as PDF. But essentially they're looking for some sort of choice that has PDF in it. So if I choose Microsoft Print to PDF, and then I choose Print, it should pop up a box and ask me where I want to save this. Okay, so let's see, so I can save it just about anywhere here. Let's see, practice graphs. Oh, it does want me to pick someplace. There we go. And then usually it pops up the PDF so I can see it right away, but if not, let me go find that and open it for you so you can see what that looks like. All right, so here's my PDF. You can see it's got that Schaefer graphs chapter 1, and it's got just the 2 graphs that I copied and pasted in there. So for your homework, you're going to want to make sure that you copy those all into one file and then just PDF and upload that. You do not need to turn in graphs for your classwork, just for your homework.